Chapter 14, Time has come. There is a possibility that there were things we didn't know about space travel or didn't cover, but nevertheless, we would take our chances and make a run for it. Years had gone by, and for me, over 20 had gone by, since I first realized all this. We all wanted to get on with it. Our main goal was to show, with evidence, that we didn't need fossil fuels anymore or dirty fission reactors, no matter what the consequences were with corporate tyrants and the government. We needed to make this known to the whole world at the proper time. We all knew nothing would stop us trying this change in what we wanted to introduce. Introducing this was left up to Carl and Drew to accomplish, as they would be beaming the footage from our craft when we re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, so that all the people on the planet could see the capabilities of our endeavors, revealed and not denied. We hoped it would be without an incident that would be regretful, like they shoot us down or we suffocate because of mechanical failure. These were our fears, along with a few others. Magic and the rest of us thought that if the capabilities were anything like we thought they would be, that nothing short of a nuclear blast could stop us. There would be nothing in the conventional arsenal that could touch us or outrun us. So there it is. Our decision to do this was final, and we would take our chances. These last few days, Carl instructed me on all the functions of our computers and manual override. He was one of the most brilliant men also that I have had the pleasure of knowing. He made the system a command prompt and a touch command off of a keyboard, and if that didn't work, it was capable of manual override with a person that captained the ship physically. It was able to operate like a plane with a joystick and a throttle of sorts connected to the computer, with views of any side of the ship in the captain's command station. It was more like an older video game in which you could increase the ship's speed in increments from 1 through 10, the visual of all its capabilities. It looked similar to a modern jet's instrument panel at that station, but with more computer monitors. The only difference was there were no weapons functions to operate, and everything outside was on the navigators and the comm station screens as well. There were 8 views of our surroundings from 8 cameras. We all had visions of something like this in our youth, the ultimate ship to leave with, and what we wanted to have in it. The only difference was that we had to build this with a minimum of funding, but nevertheless, it was the state of the art, since nothing else existed in the world like it, built with private funding and scraps. There would be a log that I would keep on board in the Word program that also could transmit back to the base during this operation, so that all would be known about this experiment and demonstration, so that none of the information would be lost for proof. This would be sent down to the crew as we communicated for prosperity and evidence. The plans for all this, along with electrical schematics, would be kept in Drew's and Magic's safe till the day we needed them again, which would be the day we could and would patent it all. That day would be the day of the great reveal. That day, Carl would be on his way to the patent office, as Drew had to stay on on the base for us and the media as we returned. They were to reveal our experiment the next day when we left the atmosphere, and live the day of our return. The news media would be contacted, so it would be all televised. They would see and report on our first lift experiment, where we had the shell and the engine attached to the crane. Later, they would be sent the other videos that showed our progression as we built the craft and video of its maiden launch. We added a computer for music and entertainment just in case we wanted that too. We had a bathroom that operated off of a vacuum and tank system, along with a shower that operated the same way. Kind of like living with a camper shower with upholstery attachments to suck up the water as it put water and soap on you. We had an emergency oxygen system in case we lost our atmosphere, just like in a plane. And if too much food or water was released into the microgravity of our ship, there was a system that would suck it out to prevent damage to our electronics. So we believed we had every contingency covered. We were still several days away from launching, so we decided to have an extra day or two to play and go out to party one last time before we committed to this project, since we really didn't know what exactly we were facing or what would happen. But I had something else in mind also. Before that day, we would all visit our friends and relatives without revealing what we were up to. This day was for us. Later, Amy and I went to the beach and had a great day alone. That night we went out to dinner, and we were going to do the same thing we did last time and go to the doghouse and meet up with Carl and Magic this time to celebrate the change we hoped and thought we were going to bring to the world. On the way to the bar, I stopped at the river and we walked out on a long dock at a park, and that was when I asked Amy to marry me. We were alone and there was a full moon that night, so I said, I had been thinking along these lines for a while. I started my proposal when I said, I wasn't sure if you were ready yet, but I want to ask you to marry me if you will. As I whipped out a ring, I gave her a little romantic kiss on her hand and stated, will you be my wife forever? Her whole demeanor changed and she had a great big smile appear as if from nowhere. I caught her off guard. Tears developed in her eyes from the joy she felt, and then she said, yes, of course. I placed it on her finger, and then she said, I thought you would never ask. Of course we should. You knew I would say yes. I thought for a while that she would say no because of her past with her previous relationship, so I waited till now to make sure. Several years had went by. I then said, let's do it tomorrow. How can we do it so quick? She responded. I told her, I have been planning this for a while, and I already talked to the pastor at the Methodist church, and it was all set up, or at least that part of it. All we just have to do now is the blood test and paperwork tomorrow. Then it'll all become legal. Then the next day we take that to the pastor, and with a witness or two it'll be done. That's how. You're a funny man, she said. When you wanted something, you go for it, with confidence, don't you? You know what I said. She asked me, did the rest of the guys know you were doing this? What do you think? She laughed and then said, you all are a bunch of shitheads, aren't you? Of course, I replied. This is why we are friends, and now you're one too. What, she said, a shithead or a friend? I said both, as we bantered and laughed. Welcome to the club, I said, at which point she lovingly slapped me on the shoulder and called me an ass. We kissed and felt each other as we hugged, and before my passion rose too high, I said, let's go, baby. There are other people coming down the dock. We have to meet up with the boys. They're waiting for us. We have all night for this. I guess I'm ready for a drink. As we walked back to the truck hand in hand, my phone rang, and I answered. It was Carl. Hello. Yes, we're on our way. Be there in 5 minutes, okay? Bye. So what do they have planned? Nothing. They're just waiting for us to party, and she left it at that. But I think she knew something might be up. I blocked it the best I could. As we got out of the truck to enter the doghouse, she said, wait. She then jumped up into my arms and wrapped her legs around my waist and her arms around my neck and kissed me multiple times passionately all over my face and then my neck. When she got down and started to walk away, I then grabbed her, twirled her, and returned the favor all over her neck. 5 minutes seemed to pass by, and then as we approached the door, Magic and Carl had been watching out for us. The whole bar went silent, and as we walked in, the DJ spoke, so all could hear, and said, well, what's the answer? I said, it's on. Everybody cheered. All my friends raised their glasses at some of the girls, and some of the girls gathered around Amy to see the ring. 2 shots of Crown were handed to us, and we all cheered and downed our first shot. Then Magic toasted us with another drink and said, may you live long and prosper. Amy laughed her ass off and said to Magic, now, who's the Star Trek geek, Mr. Magic Spock? Those near us all laughed at the reference. Magic reached over and kissed her on the cheek. She returned it. We all downed our second drink, and everyone seemed pleased to see Amy and I so happy. They all knew my history and how long I had waited for the right person to come along, especially Carl, who had attended the bar with me there many times after he divorced his wife long ago. But unlike me, his wife left him with 4 children, and he did a good job on his own taking care of them. She lost heart and love, I guess, and left town with some other man. My girlfriend of 15 years left me far behind. So Carl and I depressed each other at the bar many nights in the past, talking about our past, and as time went on, we lifted our spirits eventually and got over it. So when I saw a new beautiful woman standing behind him that night, as I was gazing at the stage, I thought she might be someone he might like. She was about his height, and she was such a beautiful brunette. After he hugged and congratulated us both, he turned toward the bar, and knowing Carl, he didn't really notice her. So I bumped him slightly into her as she turned the other way. He had to say something, and did, and that was all it took. I just knew her beauty would do something to him. He seen something there he liked, and I knew he would. I knew him well, and what caught his eye. Then as he looked back quickly at me, not knowing to thank me or right then or not, he seemed to be amazed that suddenly out of nowhere such a beauty was now talking to him. This was the perfect opportunity for him. He knew I did it on purpose, as I said, please excuse me, sir, pretending not to know him to keep the charade going. He was taking the blame for her spilt drink and offered her a new one. They clicked immediately, and this was a good way to introduce themselves to each other, with apologies and new drinks. She had no clue that I was behind it purposefully at this time. Seemed to work, and I saw the smile that came across his face as he talked to her. And she was reciprocating and pleased with his advances. They would wind up leaving together, so my plan worked. I would be glad to hear about that later. Amy looked at me, knowing what I had caused, and said, "You really care, don't you?" "Sure," I said. "Sometimes you need a push." She came in close and hugged me around my waist as she looked into my eyes and said, "I love you so much." "I love you to the moon," I said. We sang songs that night. After all, it was karaoke night. I sang "Kiss You All Over" by Exile, with the usual results you get when you have a tin ear. Amy could really sing, though. The one she did was "I'll Stand By You" by the Pretenders. She got lots of clapping. Really good results from the crowd. The bartender, Mike, brought us our last drinks about 1:30. He was so cool. We left shortly after that before last call, but not before we got ovations from a few people that clapped and cheered us on, with a sucker thrown in a few dumbasses as we headed out the door. After all, we were going to be married soon. It was all good fun. As we left, we laughed about it. As we got into the truck, Amy whispered in my ear, "You're going to outer space right now." Before we left the parking lot, she ripped off her blouse, exposing those beautiful pointed breasts, and gave me a special treatment as I drove off. When we arrived home, we couldn't keep our hands off of each other. I threw her onto my bed, and I reciprocated that special treatment till she received multiple waves of pleasure, and then we both joined till we were exhausted. She was, in essence, everything I dreamed about, even more. I never thought I would feel this way about any woman again. Was it possible to meet your soulmate? I never believed in that and had never found that feeling in any woman, but now I would have to rethink that theory. We took care of paperwork and blood tests the next day as the boys tested every aspect of the craft one last time, especially the pressurization of the craft. We had installed a double-door system with sensors just in case. The door was the only way in and out of our big tin can. The day after that, my good friend Mike Wilcox, who is an ordained minister at the church, married us. Magic Square was my best man, and all the crew was there along with Amy's mother, father, who drove in from Orlando. This is when I found out about Amy's history. Her mom told me that she was adopted from the Ukraine directly by them at the age of 2. Her parents died at Chernobyl in that horrible accident. Those kind of power plants were one of the reasons that pushed me into our venture, and I know that Amy seen and knew this also, and this is the reason she stuck it out with us also. Her parents were some of the most kind and pleasurable people I had met in a long time. It all made sense as to who she was now because she learned that from them, and I appreciated that and told them so, and the fact that they called me their new son was somehow rewarding. Her stepmother was an accountant who dealt with corporate business and law firms. Her stepfather was a news anchor for WESH News Channel 2, which is an affiliate for NBC here in Florida. And what he will record here will be the best exclusive report of his life. He would be coached by Drew and Carl as to when to release the recording. So this was an unexpected windfall. Amy's father would think he was recording the wedding ceremonies. Mike Wilcox and his wife Lisa made sure there was a little reception with food, cake, drinks back at the shop afterwards, with music that Mike's band provided and a CD player for in between sets. A small number of guests danced and had a great time. Mike wanted to know what we had been up to out here. He knew I had spent a lot of time at Drew's and Magic's shops working. I told him, if you want to know, bring Lisa and be here in 2 days, Tuesday, 4 o'clock, to see something spectacular and for a barbecue and reception. All the crew members knew Mike and Lisa. We were all old friends. I cleared it with them first, though. They also thought outside witnesses would be a good idea, especially an ordained minister and his wife. Their reasoning, as well as mine, was also well thought out about this. So there was 20 of our closest friends and relatives at the reception, which included the rest of Mike's band, our backer Bob and his wife, and most importantly, Amy's mother and father. The rest were regular people who had important jobs in all the trades and those who owned different businesses that we had patronized for one reason or other. The idea we all agreed on was to have them all there for our exhibition of a launch and re-entry, and to have Mark, Amy's father, record it and televise it when the time was right. So we had to put it in such a way that they would come out without knowing what it was all about at first. We simply told them, for the time being, that it was a barbecue and a marriage reception. Then, before Amy and I left on our honeymoon, we made sure Mark was going to record us taking off, literally, still not lying, but he wouldn't know till that moment, recording us leaving on our delayed honeymoon, all were part of our memoirs. Our cruise ship wouldn't leave till then. We joked about that privately, since we told everyone we were going to honeymoon on a cruise ship. Little did they know what that cruise ship was. Both of us were chuckling inside. We weren't lying. We did also tell Amy's parents and the rest of the people at the reception that they would get to see what we had been working on at the shop for all this time, since most of them did ask us through the years. When they asked lately, we simply told them they had to be there on the day of the reveal and that it would all make sense then. Everyone thought it was a big party on that day before we left for our honeymoon. We had advertised it with lots of booze too. They had no clue as to what they would witness. Our cruise ship was in the yard. We did all this knowing that this will be important and historical, as we also started recording everything that was to take place. And I also wrote all about everything in a log in a journal, which you are now reading. We had such high hopes. Then this voice in my head said, "Keep watching." I almost forgot I was witnessing these events of my life again. And then I thought, where was I? But I kinda knew. I was reviewing my life. No need to ask, I thought. 20 plus years later, I inserted this sentence here and now. This is for our successors, so they do not make the same mistakes that humanity made in the past. So now here's the proof, because you know the present, and it is 1/22/2027. Next, Chapter 15, Launch Day.